Jane Velez-Mitchell here for Jane Unchained, and the Jodi Arias penalty phase retrial is finally coming to a screeching halt after months and months of testimony. This thing was supposed to be over before Christmas, and here we are barreling towards March, and it's still going on, but it's just about over for the very latest. And this is a crucial time right now. Let's go out to Levi Page. He is a very well-known crime blogger. He's also the host of the Levi Page radio show. What's going on, Levi Page?
Well, basically, Kirk Nurmi is giving his closing arguments to the jury, and what he is doing is he's making Jodi Arias the victim in this case. He is saying that Jodi Arias was demeaned. She was called names by Travis Alexander. Once again, the theme is putting the victim, Travis Alexander, on trial. And he's even trying to appeal to the jury's emotions. He showed a photograph of Jodi Arias when she was a child, a little girl. And he said, if you sentence her to death, you're killing this little girl. And that is what this is all about. The death penalty does Jodi Arias, who's admitted that she stabbed Alexander to death. Does she deserve the death penalty?
And during these closing arguments, I've read that family members of the victim, Travis Alexander, have literally run out of the courtroom because there were graphic photos. It's very emotionally packed. Imagine this. I mean, Travis Alexander was murdered by this woman. His throat slit ear to ear, stabbed something like 29 times way back in 2008. It is now 2015, and still justice hasn't been served. As this goes to the jury, and obviously there's some alternates that have to be eliminated, but there are a lot of women at this point in this jury. Do you think gender could play a role in whether or not this jury has the gumption to sentence her to death, or if they're going to deadlock like the last jury, or if they're going to say, you know what, we've bonded with her over these 4 months or so, and we're going to give her life?
You know, I have no idea. You know, I can only make a prediction, but I can recall the last trial when the jury deadlocked on whether or not Jodi Arias deserves the death penalty. One of the jurors that spoke out was a male. He was an older white male, and I recall that he was sort of sympathetic to Jodi Arias. He didn't excuse her for killing Travis Alexander, but he didn't want to sentence her to death because he kind of bought into some of the things that she was telling the jury about how she was abused verbally and maybe abusively. So I don't know how it's going to go here. I do recall that male was sympathetic towards her, but what's different during this phase, Jane, is that last time Jodi Arias was on the stand for weeks at a time. We also remember that she gave a plea for the jury last time to save her life. She did testify this time, but it was cut short because she was trying to manipulate the court system. She didn't want the media or the public to see her, courtroom observers to see her testify. The judge kicked the media and the public out for her testimony. The media challenged that. They got back in, and then Jodi refused to testify, and she basically got her way. She was not cross-examined. So she did get some out there, but not as much as she did during her first trial. So it will be interesting to see if this jury is able to bond with her, because they haven't really heard from her that much. And she switched it up. She refused this time around to give a statement to the jury to save her life. Last time we recall that she gave a statement to the jury, and she talked about how she was saving her hair for cancer victims, how she was selling t-shirts for domestic abuse survivors, and how she was an awesome person. She didn't get to do that this time around. So maybe there's a possibility that this jury doesn't bond with her like the other jury did.
Well, those are excellent points, and I don't think any of us will ever forget when in the last trial where she was convicted but the jury hung on whether to give her death, she whipped out this survivor t-shirt during her final allocution, which really was a slap in the face to victim Travis Alexander's family, because once again she's playing the victim card, the survivor of domestic abuse. And now, as far as Prosecutor Juan Martinez's closing argument, he certainly outlined all of her machinations, her diabolical plotting of this murder, her cover-up afterwards, calling Travis and leaving a voicemail for the dead man, inviting him to a play, acting as if she had nothing to do with it. He also said that some of the things that the defense is claiming are mitigators are not mitigators. The claim or the purported borderline personality disorder that she has, which actually the prosecution argued in the last trial, and now the defense is saying, yeah, she does have borderline personality disorder. But the prosecutor is saying, so what? That's not a mitigator. The defense is saying, hey, you know, her age, her relatively young age is a mitigator. The prosecution is saying, no, that's not a mitigator. So what do you make of the prosecution's closing?
I mean, I think the Juan Martinez did a pretty good job, as he always does. Obviously, we couldn't see it, but I think that some of the points that he made were awesome. One point that he made that I found very compelling was that he said that right before Travis Alexander was murdered by Jodi Arias, that she was phone stalking him, calling him relentlessly. And that sort of paints her in the picture of someone that was obsessed with him. And it kind of goes against the fact, the picture that the defense is saying that she's a victim. If she's a victim, why is she calling him all the time? If he's verbally and mentally abusive, she would not want any contact with him. It would be the other way around. Travis would be the one making those phone calls and stalking her, but it was the opposite. She was the one that was phone stalking him. And some of the things that we know as the public, we got to keep in mind, this jury doesn't know. I don't think that they know about all of the stalking that Jodi Arias did, such as breaking into his home through the doggy door, stalking his girlfriend, sending them threatening letters, calling them whores because she was jealous of them after they broke up, even hacking into his email account. I think they do know about that one, but they don't know everything the public knows about Jodi Arias because of the rules of evidence.
Well, it's going to be a very nail-biting time as the jury begins to get this case, and at any time now could, after the jury instructions begin deliberating, we're going to be all over it, watching and waiting. And remember, all they need is one. I mean, it's sort of an uphill battle, because if they deadlock, that wipes death off the table automatically. And if one person in the jury says, no, I don't have it in me to give her the death penalty, then she doesn't get it. No, this case has been difficult for me. I wrote a book on the case. It was a New York Times bestseller, Expose the Secret Life of Jodi Arias. And if you want to get the story that nobody has heard in the courtroom, please read it, because it's got all the secrets. But I personally am not a proponent of the death penalty. It has nothing to do with this case at all. I think this woman is a vicious, horrible killer. I don't think she should ever see the light of day. I think she's diabolical evil. I don't think she's mentally ill to the point that she didn't know right from wrong. She knew what she was doing. She covered it up. She's a vicious person who takes no personal responsibility. I just don't personally, because of my own personal belief system, believe in the death penalty. I don't believe you solve violence with more violence. So it's been a quandary for me, but I will say that if there's anybody out there that does deserve it, she would be one of the top candidates. But
we have to remember, Jane, that this jury, before they are allowed to sit on a death penalty jury, they cannot be against the death penalty. So that is a factor that maybe helps the prosecution. And a lot of defense attorneys don't like that is how our court system is set up in death penalty cases. Before you sit on a jury, you have to be death qualified. But we've seen time and time again where death qualified juries go soft on female defendants. The Casey Anthony jury didn't even make it to the penalty phase, but they were still asked about the death penalty during the guilt or innocence phase because they had to be death qualified. They acquitted Casey. Some of the jury during the first trial, they also were death qualified. Some of them did not go along with all the other jurors and deadlocked the jury. Some of them did not think Jodi Arias deserves the death penalty. So it's going to be very telling to see which way this jury goes, but they are all death qualified. They all say that they have no problems handing out the death penalty if it comes to it. And, you know, I respect your opinion on the death penalty, and I agree with you somewhat. I think that we handed out in a lot of cases to poor black people more than we do, such as people like Jodi Arias, who comes from a middle-class background, who's white and attractive. Jurors go softer on them than they do minorities who find themselves in trouble with the law, and that's a disparity in our criminal justice system. But hopefully that justice will be served here. Either way, she's never getting out again, and that's a good thing.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to be fascinating. Levi Page, it's so great talking to you, and we're going to get back in touch with you when we find out what's really going to happen.